Coming up with a strong password every single time can be challenging, and that is why in this video we are going to create a password generator using JavaScript. So as you can see, if I click on this generate button, it generates a random password for us. If we want, we can include numbers. If we want, we can include symbols, and we can also specify the length of our password. So for example, let's say 14 here, and this will generate a secure 14 character password for us. If we click on generate again, it will again generate random passwords. So let's not waste any time and get started by creating an index.html. We also need a style.css, so style.css and a main.js. Okay, in the HTML, let's create a basic markup. So exclamation mark, tab, and then we can link our CSS file. So we can say link, and we're going to link our style.css, and let's do the same for our JavaScript. So we're going to say script source equals to main.js, like so, and let's open it up with our live server. So open with live server, and now we have this empty page. So let's create a container. A container is basically going to be this div that contains all the elements. So let's create that container. So div with the class of container, and inside that, for now, let's just say hello, and there is our hello text. So let's copy the class. So Control C, and let's Control V it here. So Control V. Let's give it a background color. So let's say background color should be RGBA, and this will be a transparent white color. So we can say 255 and 255 for white, and the opacity will be, let's say, 0.2 or 20%. So if I save it, this is not that visible. So let's give our body a dark background color. So let's say body to have a background color. So let's say background color and choose a dark color. So for now let's say hashtag 000. So completely black, but complete black does not look that good. So let's change it a little bit. So let's try to change it. Let's try this color, or a little darker. Okay, like so. Now let's center our container. So to do that, we're gonna say our body should have a display of flex. So display flex, and we can say justify content. So justify content to center. If we do this, as you can see, our container is centered vertically. So now horizontally. So let's do it vertically. So we can say align item center. If we do this, as you can see, nothing is happening. That is because our body does not have enough height, because it does not have much content. So we are going to say HTML and body, both of them to have a height of 100%. So let's say height of 100%, and now our div is both centered horizontally and vertically. So let's give it a width. So let's say width should be 300 pixel, and let's say it should have a padding of top bottom, let's say 1.5 em, and left and right should be 1 em, like so. So here is our container. So now we have this title. So let's do the title. So I'm going to create a paragraph that will have a class of title, and it will say password generator. Save it, and here is our text. So let's style them. So our body should have a color. The color should be white, and let's say the font family. So font family should be Arial, like so. Now let's target our title. So the title, let's say we want the text align to be center. So text align center. We also want the font size to be bigger. So let's say 1.5 em. So 1.5 em, like so. This should be good enough. And now let's create this display that will contain or display our password. So we're going to have another paragraph that will have a class of display, like so. For now, let's just say click on generate. So here is that. So let's style this. So let's copy the class again. So let's say dot display. This should have a background color of this transparent black. Let's copy transparent white. Let's copy this. Control C, Control V. Let's say this time the opacity should be 0.1, like so. Let's give it some padding. So let's say padding, let's try 0.7 em. Okay, this should work. So let's also say text align to center as well. So text align center, like so. So now we are going to create this options field. So this will be an input that this will be a div that will contain one input and one paragraph. So let's create that. So first we are going to create a div that will have a class of input. So dot input, actually let's say dot option, that will be a better name, option. So inside that we are gonna have a text checkbox. So let's create that. So first one will have a class of caps for capital letters. So let's say caps, class of caps, and let's create a paragraph text here. So P, and here we're gonna say include, so A to Z. So if we want to include capital letters, so here is the markup rendered, but this does not look that good. So let's style it. So let's copy the class, Control V, oops. Again let's copy this background and padding, so like so, Control C, Control V, Control S. Okay, let's say this should have a display of flex. So we're gonna say display of flex, like so, and we're going to say align items to center. So align items center, okay, like so. Let's see why this padding is that big. Let's see what's happening. So okay, let's try to say padding top bottom of 0 and left right of 0.7 em. Okay, this looks much better now. Okay, let's now target the input type checkbox. So we're gonna say input that will have a type equals to checkbox. So we're going to say checkbox, and this one simply going to have some margin on the right. So we can say margin right of 0.5 em. So 0.5 em, like so. So this is our checkbox and this is the text. This is looking good. So let's copy this some more time. Let's see how many we have. We have 1 2 3 4 5 of them. So let's copy this 5 more times. So copy this 1 2 3 4 more times. That will give us the 5 options. So here are they are stuck together. So let's say our option should have a margin bottom. So we're gonna say margin bottom of 0.5 em. Let's try this, and this should work. And let's change them. So the second one will say lowercase a to z. So lowercase a to z, and the input will have a class of smalls for small letters. Then we have 0 to 9. In this case the class will be nums for numbers. And finally we'll say include symbols, and this one will say sims for symbols. If we save it, and these are as we expected rendered. So as you can see, if I refresh the page, the first two are checked by default. So let's do that. So we're gonna check the first and second one should be checked by default. So we can give it an attribute called checked, like so. Oops, it should not be here. So Control X, instead it should be right here. So Control V, and now our first two input or option will be checked. Now for the last one we're gonna say length or password length. Let's see what we said. Okay, we said password length, so we don't want input here, so we're going to say password length. Password length. And then we're going to have a input type text. So we're going to say input and type equals to text, and by default it will have a value of 8. So let's say value should be 8, like so. So here is our input. So let's style this. So let's say, okay, let's give it a class also. So let's say class of length. Copy this, Control C, and in the CSS paste it. So dot Control V, and let's say this should have a width, which should be, let's say, just 20 pixel. And let's say text align to be center. So text align center, like so. Let's give it a padding. So let's say padding, let's give it some padding at top bottom of, let's say, 0.5 em, and left right can be 0, or let's say 0.3 em. And yeah, this should work. And let's give it a background color of this same transparent white. So Control C, Control V again, and we want to remove the border and outline. So we're going to say border to none, and we're also going to say outline to none. So here is our input. So let's say this should have a color of white. So color hashtag FFF, and we can say margin left to auto. So let's say margin left to be auto. So this will be at the right side. Let's try to add some padding on left right as well. Let's see if that looks any better. So 0.1 em, or let's say 0.2 em, 2 em of course. Okay, let's try to add a two-digit number. So like so. Okay, this looks good. Okay, let's say the border radius should be 3 pixels. So let's say border radius should be 3 pixel, like so. And lastly, we'll have this button that will say generate password. So let's create that. So we're going to say button, that will have a class of button, and here we're going to say generate password, like so. Let's style this. So let's say it will have a display of block. So let's say display block, and this will have a width of 100%. So it spans across the entire container. So we're going to say width of 100%, like so. Let's give it a padding. So let's say padding should be again 0.7. Let's try 0.7 em, and yeah, this should be good enough. And we're going to say border and outline to none, just like our input. So copy this, Control C, enter, Control V, and now let's give it some border radius. So let's say border radius of 3 pixel as well, and we also want a background color. So let's say background color. For now, let's just select this and change it the way we like. So let's say this color. Let me see how that looks. Okay, let's change it. Okay, let's see how this looks. I mean, this should work. Let's just say the text transform to be uppercase and color should be white. So let's say color of hashtag FFF, like so. We can also say the font weight. So font weight to be, let's say, bolder. So this should be all our HTML and CSS. Now I want to just remove the padding from the top of the container. So let's do that. So let's say padding top of, let's say, 0. And now this looks much better. So let's now move on to our JavaScript. So in the JavaScript, first we want to select our options and this button. So let's say const, and first one we want is include A to Z. So we're gonna say include underscore AZ for include underscore A to Z. This will be document.query selector. So document.query selector, and this one we had a class of caps. So let's say dot caps. Let's copy it a few more times. So then we have lowercase AZ, so A to Z, that had a class of smalls. So smalls. Then we had include 0 to 9, which had a class of nums. And then we had a include sims for symbols. And this one also had a class of sims. Okay, what else we have? We have this length. So let's do that. So we're going to say let length. Oops. So our length had a class of, let's see, okay, length. Look, copy this, Control C, Control V, and lastly we want to target our button. So let's say button. Button had a class of button. And finally we want to select this display that will basically display our generated password. So let's say dot display or const display. Our display had a class of, let's see, display. So copy this, Control V. Now we want to add a click event to our button. So we're gonna say button dot add event listener click, and we're gonna run this function. For now, to test it, just do an alert. So we can say alert, and let's say 0 for simple test. Control S. Now if I save it, if I click on it, it says 0. Okay, so now we're going to create some more variables. So we're going to say const A to Z characters. So characters underscore A to Z. So A to Z characters, capital A to Z characters will be capital A to 0. Then we have the small a to z, then we have numbers, and then finally we have symbols. And now we have to create a variable called password characters. So let's say password characters, pwd for password and chars for character. By default it will be an empty string, and now we're gonna check if the include a to z is clicked, then we want to add the capital characters in our password characters. We're going to do the same for the lowercase numbers, so let's do that. So we're going to say password plus equals to lowercase characters. We're going to do the same for the numbers, and finally we're going to do this for our symbols. So after that, if we just console log our characters, so console.log password characters, let's open up our console. So open. So now by default we have capital A to Z and small a to z checked. So if we now click on generate, as you can see our password characters are capital A to Z and small a to z. If I uncheck this, then our characters is only capital A to Z. If we check numbers, then it also includes number. If it includes symbols, then it includes symbols. We also want to get the length of our password, so we're going to say let len equals to length dot value, like so. So we can console log our length as well. So let's say length for length and click on generate, and it says 8. If I now increase this to, let's say, 32, it says 32. So now we are going to create a function that will generate a random password for us. So we are going to say let pwd for password equals to, we are going to call a function called generate password, and this will take our password characters and length. So let's create this function now. So let's say function generate password, and what it will do is, by default the password will be an empty string, and at the end we want to return the password. So we're going to say return password. So now let's say the inputs value is 8 and our password character is this. So basically we want to pick 8 random characters from our string. So to do that, we're going to use a for loop. So we're going to say for let I equal to 0, I is less than length I plus plus, and then we're going to say password equals to a random character from our string. To do that, we're going to say password dot characters at, and we're going to use a random index. To get the random index, we're going to say mat.floor and then mat.random times password characters dot length, like so. So if we do this and now console log our password, so let's say console.log password. So now if I just click on generate, okay, let's see what's wrong here. Let's try to use the square bracket here instead of character add function. So let's try this, Control S. Okay, it's giving us an error. Let's see what is that. So syntax error, unexpected token square bracket. Why is that? So we have two opening brackets and only one closing bracket. So let's remove this one and click on save, and if we click on generate, it still gives us an empty string. Let's see what is wrong here. Let's try to console log our password characters and the length. Let's see how they look like. So let's say console.log password characters, and let's also console.length. So Control S. If we click on save, and it's giving us an input field. Let's see why is that. Okay, we don't want to say length, we want to say len. Len is our length. As you can see here, we say len equal to length dot values, like so. Now if we click on generate, as you can see, it gives us a random password. Let me remove this console log, and if we click on generate, as you can see, this gives us a random password. If we increase the number here, so let's say 20, this gives us a random password of 20 characters. If we click on include numbers and symbols, then this will give us a password that includes both number and symbol. So finally we just have to say display.innerText equal to the password that we just generated, and that should be all. So let's try it out. And if I click on generate, as you can see, this generates a random password. We can include numbers and we can include symbols, and finally we can add a length here, so let's say 12 characters, and it works as intended. So that's gonna be it, guys. I hope you like this video. If so, toss a like, and I will see you next time.